So do you have a name for your business? Maybe you already have a name and you're not really sure it's the name you want to keep, or maybe you're just getting started and you have no idea about what to name your business. Well, in this video, I'm going to take you through 9 steps that will help you figure out the right name to give to your business. G'day there, welcome to my channel. My name is Jess Van Den and I've been helping makers just like you and me work out how to have a thriving, profitable handmade business since 2013. And I've been running my own since 2008 actually. And that business is called Ethereal. And that will come into play in this episode today. And this business is called Create and Thrive. I'd had a few years to figure things out by the time I named Create and Thrive that I didn't understand when I named Ethereal. And we're going to get into that in today's video, which is all about how to name your business, the things you should think about, the do's and the don'ts when it comes to choosing the right name. So the first thing you want to do when you think about naming your business is just brainstorm. Just think about, what your business is about, what you sell, your life, your dreams, whatever, just blue sky. Write down as many possibilities as you can possibly think of and sort of sit with that for a little while. Run through, keep a big list, add to it as you go. Give it a good few days, I would say, in this part of the process to try to get down any word or any name that you could potentially possibly like for your business name. Look to other languages, look to hobbies, look to books you've read, look to videos, everything in your life. Have a look around and see what words might potentially appeal to you and write them down. That is step 1, just having something to start with. It may not be where you end up. In fact, the name you use might not even be on that list, but it's good to have a whole bunch of possibilities to start with. So once you have that list of possibilities, I'm going to give you 9 pieces of advice or steps to follow in order to narrow that list down and hopefully find the right name for your business. Now, I've named 3 businesses in my life. Actually, no, I lie. I've named 5 businesses. There's a couple I don't do anymore. I'd kind of forgotten about, but I've named 5 businesses in my life. And the very first one was Ethereal, my jewelry business. And I applied very few of these criteria to that because back then I had no idea what I was doing and I didn't really think about it. I just picked a word I liked and went with that. I've learnt a lot since then. Obviously, when I named Create and Thrive, that was a very deliberate name. My other podcast that I run, The Business of Making, we agonized over that name for a long time because we wanted it to be very specific and it appealed to a very specific demographic. Create and Thrive is much more broad, and maybe if I had my time over again, I might actually narrow that down a little bit because I am speaking to a very specific audience here. I'm speaking to the handmade community, and so maybe having that in there could have been good. But with the name Create and Thrive, I have a little bit more leeway. And of course, my jewelry business, Ethereal, well, that could mean anything, right? So you'll see as I go through these 9 steps how the evolution of that naming process has come about. And also, this is not a one-size-fits-all. Different types of businesses are going to have different names. And that also goes for products. Like if you have services or products, you have to name those things as well. So a lot of these points are going to be relevant to that. But let's start with number 1, and that is don't pick something too specific or too boring. You don't want a really boring name that's just kind of forgettable. But you also don't want something so specific that you box yourself in and never have the chance to expand. I'll give you an example. A lot of makers I work with use like the name of their craft in their business name. So and-so jewelry, so-and-so bags, so-and-so dresses or clothing or whatever. And, I think if you have like a brick and mortar shop, and you only sell that one specific type of thing, maybe. But even then, I think boxing yourself in by doing that really limits your potential for what you might want to do. What if you make bags now, but you evolve in your sewing journey and you decide you want to start making clothes? What do you do with your business name? Same with jewelry. What if I decide to start making something else completely different? Candles? What if I want to start making woodwork and I want to, instead of starting a whole new business, the stuff I'm making fits in with the aesthetic of what I've already been making, or I just want to pivot that business in a new direction. So see what I'm saying here about narrowing down too much? You don't need to put necessarily the name of the thing you make into the business name, because once people land on your website or your Instagram or your brick and mortar shop or whatever it might be, it's going to be pretty obvious pretty quickly what you sell. And you can use keywords and tags online in your product descriptions and in other areas of your website to bring in those shoppers, so it doesn't have to be in your business name. You know, when I named Create and Thrive, I didn't call it anything very specific. Same with the Business of Making. You know, we have a podcast, and that is the Business of Making podcast, but it's a subset of our overall name, which is the Business of Making, which could refer to a whole bunch of different things. So number 2 is kind of related to this, and it's don't use weird spellings or initials if possible. This is just because it's hard for people to hear it and then remember it and type it in. Things with initials can be a little bit clumsy, a little bit forgettable. Weird spellings, you know, same thing. What's going to happen these days is they're going to type it into Google or whatever search engine, and it's going to get auto-corrected into the closest real spelling of that word, and it's going to make it harder probably for people to find your business. So, you know, you see this a lot with some businesses who like put a K instead of a C into a word, or Flickr is the perfect example, the old photo sharing site that just had an R on the end instead of actually typing the word out. Stuff like that, you know, fiddling around with it. And you'll see from my jewelry business name, Ethereal, I totally broke this rule, like blew it out of the water. It's hard to spell. It's not a real word. I actually made it up. Now, that's not necessarily a problem. Like, think about, there's other businesses out there, Google. I mean, that is a real word, but it's not a word people were really familiar with, right? It's kind of a very unusual and not well-known word. Some businesses have made up their own words and it's been really successful. And look, I don't know that it's hurt my business, because the one good thing about having a word like that is spelt weird, or that is a new word that you've completely created, is that you get all of the things which I'm about to talk about. That's actually number 3. Can you get the .com? Yes, if you make up a word, chances are you're going to be able to get the .com for it, which is fantastic. And at number 4, can you get all the social media handles? Again, most likely the answer to that is yes. So there is an upside to that. But if you do have a made up word or a strange spelling, just beware that it might be harder for people to find you if they hear it. So whenever I say Ethereal, my business name, most people hear ethereal, which is a word, but it's spelt quite differently. And if someone types that into ethereal jewelry into the search engine, they're probably going to get a whole bunch of results that aren't me. But if they hear the PH sound, ethereal, they might have some hope of typing something that's approximately right and finding me. So, hopefully that's what happens. And I do get a lot of people actually searching. I can see in my search terms, probably because they've seen it somewhere else. But, that it can be a double-edged sword. It can work really, really well if you get it right. But if you get it wrong, it can really hurt your searchability and findability online. So that was up to number 4, which was, can you get all the social media handles? Number 5 is really important, and that is it a name that someone else is already using? It's getting harder and harder to find a business name that no one else has used yet. So you need to do your due diligence here. If you come up with a name, now this happened when we were doing the Business of Making. We're like, okay, we need the .com, we need the social media, and we need a hashtag as well. So can we find a business name that's not already in use that we can get access to all these things? And it took us quite a few tries to find the right thing. So what you want to do obviously is you want to look on all the social media platforms, you want to check the .com, you've already done that, great. Then go a bit deeper. If you're selling handmade, go and search Etsy for that business name. Just Google it and dive into a couple of pages worth of results and make sure there's nothing competing. And wherever you live, you want to also look on your local business register. So here in Australia, I'd look up, Australian Business Names Register through ASIC, and I might also want to look at my state, business registrations in my state. So whatever that is where you are, you want to look up and make sure nobody else in your area is using the same business name, because that you won't be able to register it, and it will potentially cause you legal issues down the track. So there's a few great stories of big businesses that have come a cropper with this. A fun one is a hamburger chain Burger King in America. Here in Australia, it's called Hungry Jack's, because when they wanted to expand to Australia, there was already a burger place here called Burger King who owned the rights to the name. So they couldn't use that name in Australia. They had to come up with something different. So they went with Hungry Jack's. And I mean, it's one of those things I didn't know till I was like in my late teens and went to America, and I'm like, what's this Burger King business? It's the same business. Why is that? Because they had to change the name in a different country. So that sort of thing, if you're working internationally, which most of you probably are now online, you want to make sure that you're not competing with people in other places, which is, legally maybe not so much of a problem, but when it comes to ranking well and getting found, you don't want to be competing against another company in another country that is doing really well on all of the, Google and all of those social platforms with the name that you want to use, because it's just going to make things more difficult for you. So do a really in-depth search and make sure nobody else is using the exact same name. The next one is don't make it too hard to spell. That's kind of related to the don't use the weird spellings, but don't make it too long, don't make it too complicated. Try to keep it short and simple as much as you possibly can. So say, for example, you have a last name that's not common where you live, it's hard to spell for the native speakers of wherever you are. You might want to take that and alter it slightly. I'll give you an example. One of my dad's friends has a business. He has a Polish last name or Czechoslovakian last name, not sure which. And when he started his business many, many years ago, this was like the 70s or the 80s, he realized that people could not spell his name, because when an English speaker heard it, they would have spelt it completely differently. So what did he do? He took his name and he anglicized it for his business name, so that when people tried to look him up in the yellow pages back in the day, it was easy for them to find because it was spelt the way they expected it to be spelt. Things like that might be a way around it and a way to create a word that makes more sense and is more easily found by people. For example, my own name, my last name is not Van Den. My full last name is Van Den Wassenberg. But when I decided to go into business, I decided to drop the Wassenberg because just Van Den is much catchier and snappier and shorter and easy to remember. So you might want to do something like that. It's still my name, it's just a variation of my name. So make it easy, make it short and sweet and simple. Try to make it as memorable as possible and as simple for people. Or a phrase or a word that makes sense and that sticks in the mind. Like the business of making, that's 4 words, but it's a phrase that's really memorable and it kind of twigs in people's minds. Same with Create and Thrive. So that's, that one. Next one is say it out loud. How does it sound? Does it sound good? Does it sound a bit weird? Does actually saying it make you feel like, hey, this is a name I'd be proud to say, representing my entire business? So that's a really important point I think a lot of people skip. Is it easy for other people to say? Is it easy for them to pronounce? Or is it a little bit complicated? You can see I broke this rule a bit with my business name Ethereal. The next one, number 8, is to get feedback. So actually share your potential name with 3 to 5 people or more and see what they think of it. See if they have any feedback on it, positive or negative. If you're in the Thriver Circle, my membership community for makers, you can pop over there and put that in there and ask people's opinion and see what ideas they might have. And they might help you brainstorm as well and come up with variations or a better version of the name that's going to work better for your business. And the very last step, and I think a really important one, is, does it feel right to you? Is it a name that just you get a gut feeling that, yeah, this is right. This is a name I love. It's a name I would be proud to speak. It's a name that I would be proud to share with people, that represents my business and what I do in the world. You don't want a name that in 5 years' time is going to make you cringe, or, that's going to in some way you be embarrassed by or not happy with down the line. So that's really important, to make sure it's a name that you really love and that you're proud of. And, if you find a business name that you feel this way about, but it breaks a couple of the other rules, except for the, name that other people already have rule, I think that's one you probably don't want to break. But, maybe it's spelt a bit weird, or you can't get the .com, so you have to get the .net, whatever it might be. If it just feels right and you really want to go with it, then go with it and use that name. There are ways around most of these rules if you really want there to be. And, like when I think of ethereal, would I change the name? No. Even though it breaks some of these rules, it's a word I really love, and it's a name that I'm still proud of and happy with today. I like how it feels, how it sounds, and how it looks, and how it reflects what I do. So that's, at the end of the day, what it has to come down to is it has to be a name that you are proud of and proud of using to represent your work in the world. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to my channel and give it a thumbs up. I appreciate it a lot. And if you want to stick around, have a look through my archives. I've got a lot more videos about how to run a thriving and profitable handmade business. And of course, I'll be back again soon with another video on that topic. Thanks so much for watching, and goodbye for now.